friends, how's it going? It's me, Betty Jean. Today's video is going to be my reading wrap up. Get ready with me. I know that these aren't my most popular videos, but I love just like the little community of us that love talking about books and makeup each month. It is just so much fun. I love just sitting down, doing my makeup, recapping all the books I read. I love hearing your thoughts on these books if you've read them as well. I love hearing what you've read recently. Please leave your recommendations down below. I'm always writing down new recommendations. It is just so much fun. I have a mixture of romance, thrillers, fantasy. It was such a fun reading month, so many fun things, and I'm excited to share them with you. Before we hop into the video itself, as far as my accessory details go, I believe this is Shop Sun & Co, and then these are Primark earrings and little Amazon plugs. And yeah, I don't think I need to continue babbling because this is going to be a long video, but let's just hop in and chat about all the books that I read in the month of September. All right, friends, let's dive into it. I have 13 books to talk about, and I'm honestly shocked about that number because I was off to kind of a slow start at the beginning, and if it hadn't been for one, utilizing audiobooks to kind of jump between audio and physical when I was just super busy and needed to multitask, and also the fact that I did have a cold over this past weekend and the power was out for a day because of Hurricane Helen. So I was able to just read and it was great. But if I sound like I'm going through puberty throughout this video, it's because of my cold from the weekend, so bear with me. So we're just gonna jump into it. As usual, I'll be doing my makeup as I talk about all these books. I'm not gonna give spoilers, I'm just gonna give the general synopsis and my overall thoughts on them, my rating, stuff of that nature. If I forget to mention something makeup-wise, it'll all be in the description box as usual. Let's just dive in. I will be using the Smashbox Halo. They sent me this tinted moisturizer and I am loving it. My only complaint is I wish they'd sent me the shade Fair. This is the shade Light, so it's a little yellow on me. It looks a little too dark, but if I use a small amount and I also use a lighter concealer, I can make it work, it's fine. The first book I read in the month of September was Christina Lauren's The Soulmate Equation. I love Christina Lauren books. It's actually two authors, Christina and Lauren. I love her books. I feel like I've never met one of her books that I don't like, and this one was no exception. We have our main character, Jess. She actually has a kid, Juno, and basically her whole world revolves around just like her work, her child, her best friend Felicity, who she calls Fizz. She is like a freelance stats person. She works with like different companies and corporations and gets hired on to do like stats and analytics and things of that nature. She ends up meeting this guy River, and on almost an opposite end of the spectrum, he is part of a matchmaking service. Like he's the owner of this matchmaking service that is trying to get up and running. Her analytical mind doesn't believe in any of this stuff. She doesn't think that that's something you can just program. Well, on a whim, she ends up submitting her DNA to the dating service, and what do you know, her and River get almost a perfect match. That has like never been seen before, and it's like a huge deal. They end up getting kind of roped into sort of like fake dating just to like test it out and see if like this is even possible, mostly for the science aspect of it, just to see if this was an actual almost perfect match and see if it's something that they can make work together. We have a little bit of a mixture of like a fake dating Grumpy Sunshine kind of trope because he's super like not about it. We have a little bit of a fake dating, I would say Grumpy Sunshine. I wouldn't really say enemies to lovers just because it's not like they hated each other, they just didn't love each other based on first impressions, but I feel like Grumpy Sunshine sums them up a little bit better. I really enjoyed Jess's kid, June. I thought she was super cute and I feel like she added to the story really nicely. Overall, I really enjoyed seeing just how these characters grew and how they interacted with each other and how they learned to trust each other and stuff like that. It was super cute, it was fun. Not my favorite Christina Lauren book. I don't know if anything will ever beat Love in Other Words. That is one of my favorite books of all time, but I did really enjoy this one. I gave it a solid 4 stars. And it made me really happy. The next book I read, I guess sticking with romance, I read Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood. This is her newest book, and this is still one of her like STEM romances, but she did say that this was her step more into erotica rather than just like rom-com. There were also heavier topics in this book, like stuff like dealing with poverty and food issues and things like that. We have our main character, Rue. She is a biotech engineer and her company is dealing with a hostile takeover from this guy, Eli, and his business partners. I mean, it's not just him by himself. And coincidentally, she had literally just met him the night before. She was just trying to find someone to hook up with. She met Eli. They did not hook up, but she did meet him the night before. I feel like this one was definitely a little heavier on the spice than some of her previous books, but I will say I expected more just with the fact that there was this blatant disclaimer that this was more erotica than just regular rom-com, but I'm not mad at it. I feel like the balance was really good. I feel like even if it does claim to be more erotica, there was still enough of a plot to keep the book going where I didn't feel bored, because I do enjoy spice in my books, but it can get redundant if it's too much and there's not enough plot to back it up. So I feel like the balance was actually really good with this book. It was fun just seeing how Rue and Eli kind of interacted, dealing with the fact that his company is literally trying to take over her company and they have this connection, but they're also kind of enemies in the workplace in a way. It was really, really fun. I enjoyed their chemistry together. I felt like it was really fast paced and it was really easy to get invested in, and I'm pretty pleased with it. Definitely a fun kind of workplace romance, rivals to lovers sort of vibe. I gave it another solid 4 stars, and I'm kind of picky with Ali Hazelwood books, I've learned. I loved Theoretically, like that was a 5-star. This was a 4-star. Love Hypothesis, I think I gave like 3, like it was just fine. Like I didn't dislike it, but it wasn't like my favorite. And then Bride I gave 2. I just did not love that one. Still have not read Love on the Brain. I've kind of bounced around. I should probably circle back to that one eventually. But yeah, kind of hit or miss with her books, but this one was a hit. I thought it was really fun. I enjoyed the characters and the way they interacted with each other. Next up, I read The Return of Ellie Black by Amiko Jean. This one was just okay. It was fine. My friend Trisha gave this to me. This was her book of the month a few months ago, and I debated actually picking this as my book of the month that particular month when I still subscribed. I don't subscribe anymore. But she gave me this one when she was done with it. But it was just okay. The pacing was fine, but overall I just found myself kind of going in and out of being invested with it. Real quick, my little blush combo I'm gonna start is Enchant Liquid Highlight from Rare Beauty with the Sun Blossom Sun Blush from Nyx Cosmetics. I really like these blushes. They're very creamy and lovely. But basically, we have Ellie Black. She disappeared mysteriously a while back. Chelsea is the lead detective on the case. And what do you know, 2 years after Ellie Black disappeared, she shows up. She just shows back up out of the blue. The book basically goes back and forth between different perspectives. We have kind of past and present timelines going on as well, trying to piece together what happened then, what's happening now, and how do they connect? How did we get here? For me, the most interesting parts of the book were Ellie's time like away when she was off for 2 years. I don't want to like spoil things, but when she was disappeared for 2 years. I liked that stuff more. It was, I don't know, creepy and unsettling and weird, and I was just very invested in that part of the story. The ending was kind of anticlimactic, but overall, like, it was fine. It was entertaining enough. For this particular book, I did end up switching between audio and physical a lot, just because the audio seemed to hold my attention a little bit more than the book itself. I ended up giving it 3 stars. I feel like that's fair. Like, it was fine. I wasn't like obsessed with it, living, breathing, dying, but I also like didn't hate it. It was just fine. Oh, I always forget how pigmented these blushes are. I go in with the tiniest little amount, and then it's always so much. Ooh, it's so nice though. I love it, so cute. I also just got this brush recently from Milk Makeup. They sent it to me along with some of their new jelly tint shades, and I really like this brush. I think it's really nice. It's dense but still blendable, and I think it works really nice for cream and liquid blushes, which I would imagine was the purpose since it came alongside of like jelly blushes. Cute, cute, cute. I love that blush. I'm just gonna work on kind of setting my under eyes and the perimeters of my face before I add like powder blush, because I like to layer my blushes. I think it looks good and I can never get enough. Well, the next book I read was Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. I was really excited to dive into this one. The cover just looks so mystical and magical, and it was fine. It was fine. We have our main character, Dora. She was cursed by a fairy at a young age to only have half a soul. She basically doesn't really express emotions like everyone else, and she has a harder time forming connections. She ends up meeting this magician, Elias, I don't remember how to say his name. She thinks he is the only person who might have the power to help her situation. They end up setting off on an adventure together to help get the other half of her soul back. This is very like Bridgerton meets the Fae sort of vibes. Like it's magical and Fae and stuff like that, but it's also like more Regency sort of vibes, like with the clothing and the dialect and like the dating etiquette and stuff like that, like a man and a woman who's unwed can't be in the same room together, like that kind of thing. I did end up switching to audio for most of this book just because I was having a really hard time getting sucked in by just reading it. Audio helped me a lot. I felt like I could, I don't know, just visualize what was happening a lot better and have it on as more like background noise while I was getting other work done. And overall, it was a fun, whimsical story. I liked seeing like what was going on with the Fae realm and like why did half of her soul get taken and how are we gonna get it back and all this stuff. I liked getting to meet the different characters. It was a fun, whimsical tale, but overall, I'm not itching to read the other books in this series. I didn't realize this was a multi-book series until I started reading it and like entered it on my Goodreads. But I don't know if I'm itching to read the other books, but it was a fun little whimsical tale. And I feel like especially if you're someone who's really into like that Bridgerton-esque sort of setting and time period meets magical and fae, you'd probably absolutely love this. It was cute. I ended up giving it just a solid 3 stars because like, again, I wasn't obsessed with it, but I didn't dislike it. It was just fine. It was an entertaining enough read for the moment. This next one, if you watch my monthly favorites video, you'll already know. But 6 Scorched Roses, this was the novella 1.5 in the Crowns of Nioxia series. This is the novella that goes right after the Serpent in the Wings of Night, if I'm remembering that correctly, by Carissa Broadbent. This was such a fun, quick read, literally less than 200 pages. I just sat down and read it in one sitting. It was beautiful. Basically, we have our main character, Lilith. She's a human and she was born terminally ill, and that's basically her life. She's just always sick. And then later in life, the rest of her town ends up getting plagued and everyone is getting sick and dying, unrelated to her, who hers was just she was born that way. She works in medicine and she's trying really hard to find a solution to save her town. She ends up meeting up with this vampire Vale and making a deal with him. She says, Vale, I will trade you 6 roses for 6 vials of your vampire blood over the course of 6 months. She thinks that his vampire blood will help save her town. She can incorporate it in the medications and give it to the people and they'll get better. As you would expect in a romantasy sort of book, things progress with their relationship. There are problems with that as well though, because also on top of the fact that her town is dying, so there's that level of stress going on. It's also kind of forbidden for her and him to be together, a human and a vampire. It's like a whole mess. So there's problems going on with that. It was super fast paced, super quick read. It jumped right in. I loved it. Even though it was just a quick, less than 200 page novella, I got so invested. I definitely could have seen this particular story be a full length story, but I'm not mad at what they were able to do with just this short story. I thought it was great. I gave it 4 stars. I almost wanted to give it 5, but I feel like because it was so short, it didn't give me quite the 5-star feeling, but it was a great, great read. I loved this world. I loved these characters. This was great. To layer on top of the blush I already put down, I kind of want to use a little bit of cannoli from the Baked Blush palette from Beaute Bar. I think that'll be cute. The next book I read though was Unfortunately Yours by Tessa Bailey. This is the second book that went after Secretly Yours, which I wasn't obsessed with. It wasn't bad, but I wasn't obsessed with it. This is the sequel and I was much more excited to dive into this one because I was more interested in the sister's point of view. I thought her story might be more interesting. Basically, Julian from book 1, this is his sister, Natalie. She is a Napa wine heiress. She doesn't really want much to do with that side of her life though, like that was her family's stuff. She's been working in finance. She recently lost her job in finance and she needs to make her way back into that world. She finds herself back on the family vineyard in order to, you know, just live, recoup some costs, that sort of thing, try to get back on her feet. Oh yeah, that's so, so pretty. I love that. That looks good. She wants to get access to her trust fund so that she can open her own business in finance, but there's a kicker. In order to utilize her trust fund, she has to be married, according to whatever documentation was filed when the trust fund was made. Now, switch over to our other character, August. He also owns a vineyard, but he's horrible at making wine. Like, he's just not good at it. He wants to be good at it so bad, but he just is not. He's struggling to make it work in the name of his deceased best friend. He's doing it for a great noble cause, but he's not good at it. He needs a loan to get his business back on track, but nobody's really willing to give him a loan. But if he was tied to a very powerful name, maybe he could get the loan he needs. So him and Natalie end up connecting. They end up deciding to get married out of convenience so that she can access her trust fund. He'll be able to get a loan that he needs. They do have a history of not being able to stand each other. They know each other from the past, and that does stay a pretty common theme throughout this book. They're constantly bickering and bantering with each other, and it's not always the most fun to read. There were times that it got pretty annoying, if I'm being honest with you. They're very much a fight and make up sort of dynamic, like constant. It took a while for me to get invested in their relationship, but I did enjoy them as individual characters, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know if I loved them so much together, but separately, I really found them pretty great. Like, I enjoyed their quirks and I enjoyed just their stories, but together they just didn't mesh very well. Overall, it wasn't the best book I've ever read, but it was entertaining enough. I did enjoy it better than the first book, but I still wanted to give this one just like a solid 3 stars. I also did switch between physical and audio for this one just because, to be honest, I had work to do. Like, I had things to do, so like in the midst of like gathering, like filming things or filming swatches or editing like reels, like things that don't require sound, I would just have it on as background noise, and I just found that more enjoyable than trying to like sit and read through like their story, because I wasn't super invested in it. I'm gonna work on my freckles, brows, stuff like that while we talk about my next book, which was an ebook. I've been trying to utilize the Libby app with my local library and check out books that way as well. So I read The Pumpkin Spice Cafe. I have been itching to read this one. I keep seeing it pop up absolutely everywhere, and I was dying to dive into it. This was a super simple, cozy and cute, like grumpy sunshine, small town, heavy autumn vibes. It was absolutely adorable. Very much puts you in that like autumnal feeling. Like, if you're looking for a very seasonal book that's like cutesy and fluffy and not like too much substance, this is the one for you. We have our main character, Jeannie. She moves to the small town of Dream Harbor to take over her aunt's little pumpkin spice cafe. She's feeling kind of restless and spooked in her new environment and ends up getting scared by local farmer Logan, who's dropping off produce. They're very much that grumpy sunshine sort of dynamic, but he's very much the kind of like grumpy to everyone but her, if that makes sense. They have an instant attraction. They end up being friendly with each other right off the bat. I guess even though she was spooked by Logan and it ended up being nothing, there's still weirdness happening with the cafe. Like, just weird stuff keeps happening. She's convinced that there's a ghost or something wrong is afoot. So she's trying to get acclimated in the town, meet new people, make friends, all while also trying to solve the mystery of what's happening with her cafe. What is this weirdness? Overall, this book wasn't anything super intricate, but it was exactly what I needed in the moment. It was very just like fluffy, cutesy, quick. It was a very fast read. I think my total reading time was like maybe 3.5 hours. Like, it was a very fast book to fly through. I am excited to continue this series, and I did read the second book, which I'll talk about later. You get little snippets of side characters that I assume will be featured in future books, which I'm excited about, and I'm really invested in these side characters, even though I barely know them at this point in time. For this book, though, I ended up settling on just a 3-star because even though I really like the environment, I like the cozy vibe, I like the small town atmosphere, I just wasn't obsessed with our main characters in this book. I don't know what it was. It was just, like, maybe Jeannie was a little too much sunshine. Sometimes grumpy sunshine, like, I love that trope so much, but sometimes it's like so extreme where like the sunshiny part of the relationship is just like so much, and it became a little like that. It was all just a very surface level book, nothing too crazy. It was cute, but I feel like 3 stars is fair because I don't feel like 3 stars is bad. It just means it wasn't like a favorite thing of mine, but it was still cutesy and it makes me excited to read the other books. I know as of right now, The third one comes out soon. I think it's a Christmas book and it comes out sometime early October. And then the fourth one I think comes out in the spring. So I don't know if there'll be more than 4, but that's what I know so far. And I'm excited about it. And like I said, I've read the second one, so I'll dive into that discussion with you in a moment. While I do my face highlight and setting spray, I'll talk about the next book. I'm gonna be using Dim Glow from Oden's Eye as my highlighter. The next book I read was The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I greatly enjoyed this book, actually. I feel like her books have been very hit or miss for me. Like, The Paris Apartment was fun, I enjoyed that. The Hunting Party I didn't love a ton, like it was hard to care about the characters. This one I think is my favorite one I've read from her. It was super captivating. We have an Irish wedding. I loved the setting for this, but amidst the wedding, questionable things are happening. The book follows various members of the wedding party, like we have the wedding planner, we have the bride, we have the best man, we have the bridesmaid, we have the plus one, like we have various members of the wedding in their perspectives. And we're leading up to the day of the wedding and eventually a murder. All the characters have a motive and it was super interesting and fun, just kind of unraveling like where each person's like perspective is coming from, what their reasoning would be, stuff like that. I loved getting to know everyone's backstory. I loved how it was paced. I loved the way things tied up and ended and just seeing how everything sort of connected. Again, just because of like the lack of time to physically sit down and read, I did switch to audio for most of this book, but I loved the audio for this because it was a full cast, so each chapter being in a different perspective was told by a different person. So it was really immersive. It was super fun. I ended up giving it a solid 4 stars and I had a great time with it. So that was a really fun read. Let's get prepped now for some eye makeup. I actually don't want anything too crazy today. I really want to use this liquid eyeshadow that came in the Beaute Bar Vamp collection, which I have already done a Instagram and YouTube short with the Vamp palette, and I do have a 3 looks 3 palettes video coming soon that includes the Vamp palette, so stay tuned for that. That video I think will be the video after this one. But there's a liquid shadow in the collection that I really want to use as a winged liner, and I was thinking I would just put Ritz from Colourpop all over my lid kind of as the base. Just kind of a nice little liner one and done eyeshadow sort of moment today. So while I prime with my Dede Signature primer, let's talk about my next book, and it was the next book in that little Dream Harbor series that I did check out on the Libby app. This was the Cinnamon Bun Bookstore. I was actually really excited to dive back into this town so soon. I didn't think I was going to, but the book became available on Libby much quicker than I expected. This one was so cute. I did love this one more than the first one, and I had a feeling I would. I was just really excited to get to know these characters. I feel like this book in particular also built on the town itself and the side characters even more, which was really nice. It made it more immersive for me. We have our character Hazel. She is friends with both Logan and Jeannie in book number 1. Actually, she might be cousins with Logan. She might be related to Logan if I'm remembering correctly. Well, she works at the Cinnamon Bun Bookstore and she starts finding little clues throughout different books. Like in the romance section, there'll just be like a book that's placed wrong, and then there's like a line in a book that's underlined that's like, I don't know, like telling her to do something, like go on an adventure of some sort. She's been feeling kind of weird because she's turning 30 soon and she feels like she's kind of wasted her 20s. She feels like she just has a very boring, low-key persona, which is fine, but she's like worried that that's like gonna be something she regrets. So she wants to kind of set out on following these clues as an adventure leading up to her 30th birthday as kind of like a big hoorah before she turns 30. Ritz is just forever such a beautiful eyeshadow. It's so unmatched. She ends up teaming up with her friend, the fisherman, Nolan, just to help kind of decipher the clues and go on the adventures with her. He has been pining after her for a long time, but she doesn't really see it that way. I love the he falls first trope. I think it's so cute. But typically, he only hooks up with like tourists. He's not really doing a whole lot like dating wise, so that's kind of why she thinks that's like not an option for her. But obviously in this sort of like opposites attract, friends to lovers sort of trope, one thing leads to another, their relationship starts to progress. It's all very cute. I found these characters to be super likable. I also really love just seeing Hazel gain confidence throughout the story, because I had mentioned at the beginning that, I don't know, she's feeling kind of like lost and like bad about herself, like she wasted her 20s, she definitely starts to gain more confidence in herself throughout the book, and I just loved seeing that. I'm loving this small town setting. I love the quirky characters. I'm very excited just to continue. I do plan on reserving the third book on Libby as soon as it's available with my local library. And I mean, I'll probably try to push it to at least November. I don't really want to read a Christmas book in October, but I am excited to get to it. I think it's going to be super, super fun. It has to do with Jeannie's brother, and I'm just excited to see how this goes down. And look how pretty this liquid shadow is. My goodness, that is gorgeous. While I work on just tight lining and doing mascara and stuff, we will talk about the next book. It was The Undermining of Twyla and Frank by Megan Bannon. I was so excited to dive into this. I read the first book in the series sometime last year and I really enjoyed it, and this is the second one. It came out recently, and then the third one I think comes out sometime next year, and I'm very excited. This world is really fun. Twyla and Frank are longtime neighbors, turn to friends, turn to best friends, eventually turn to lovers. They've also started being partners in their work world. They work as marshals for the country, city, planet Tanria. I don't remember exactly if Tanria is like the country or like a more smaller region, but the region of Tanria, we'll just say that. This series is set in more of like a fantasy-esque world where there is like gods and magical creatures and stuff like that, but it's not so high fantasy that you're doing like a ton of world building. It's a little bit more of like a modern, like contemporary romance, but with a magical twist. In this case, there's also dragons, and it was super, super fun. On the job, they discover the body of one of their deceased coworkers, and his body is covered in this weird, like liquidy glitter. Shortly after, they encounter a baby dragon who ends up taking hold to Frank, which is so cute. They're a bit older as far as characters go, like they're more in their 50s as opposed to like typical like 20s and 30s setting. And he's kind of like, he's super sweet, but he has more of that gruff persona, so having this little baby dragon cling to him was so freaking cute. Throughout the story, we're trying to figure out what's going on because dragons were proclaimed extinct, so it's like, where did this baby dragon come from? There's weird things happening in the world, like weird mysteries to be unfolding. Twyla and Frank's friends to lovers relationship is something we're also navigating through the story. We get a bit of a slow burn with that as well, like that doesn't even really come into effect until much later. I also really loved the second chance at love sort of aspect because her first husband passed away long ago. He had been divorced long ago, so I loved seeing just like the second chance at love. It was so sweet. Overall, it was just such a cute, cute story. I loved the magical mixed with the contemporary rom-com. It was super, super cute. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I loved it. I'm very excited to just continue this world when the next book comes out. I'm using my Grande Lash Heated Lash Curler, just getting kind of a base set before I go in with mascara. I'm gonna use my Bella Beauty Bar Lush Lash. It's gonna go on in and work it through, or you'll get a big glob on your skin. That's fine. I'll just let it dry and then I'll pick it away. While I work on the next eye and then fix this eye, we'll continue on and talk about the next book. This is A Vicious Game. This is the 3rd book in the Halfling saga. I'm so invested in this. I can't wait for the 4th book to come out, I think in January. I'm so pumped. I think this was my favorite of the series so far, honestly. I just loved where everything went. There were so many twists and turns and things that I wasn't expecting. I can't say too much about this one specifically without spoiling the first 2, but this has just been such a great series so far. Basically, we have our main character, Kira. She initially starts as the King's Blade, which is basically like the top assassin. Usually just using a little spoolie and scraping the dried mascara will do the trick. In the first book, she'd set out on a mission in the Fae realm to capture the Shadow. There's a huge divide between like humans and really anything else, like Fae, halflings, elves, the whole 9 yards. Throughout this whole journey, we're learning more about like why the king is the way he is, her own past, more about the Fae, the whole realm. As things progress, we're getting a mixture of like rebellion, alliances, betrayal. We have sacrifice, all sorts of big things happening. It's so exciting. I love the magical vibe. I love the found family aspect with all the friends that she makes. And again, this one specifically had just so many twists and turns, and I just loved it. I loved it so much. I feel like the end of this book specifically really left me wanting more. I'm gonna do another coat. I always do a round of heated lash curler and then a coat and then a second round of lash curler and then a second coat, and it seems to be my perfect concoction to make my stubborn lashes look even remotely halfway decent. Believe it or not, we only have 2 more books left. I feel like I flew through this. I mean, I've been sitting here for a very long time filming, but I feel like this was just so fun. Time flew by so fast. The next book I read was The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. I have been itching to read this for such a long time. It is very highly loved amongst a lot of people, and I liked the first Frida McFadden book I read a lot. It was just very fast-paced and easy to read, so I was really excited to start another one. And this was actually the book I read when the power went out for Hurricane Helen, because like what else was I gonna do before work? I had literally nothing else to do, so I read all of this in basically one morning. We have our main character, Millie. She ends up getting a housemaid job for the Winchesters. It seems like a pretty standard housemaid job, you know, cooking, cleaning, taking care of the kid occasionally, stuff like that. The weird part of the whole arrangement though is her living situation. It is a live-in job, but her room is like this weird attic space with a lock that only locks from the outside. Super sketch, super weird. I think for lips, I just want like this really dark brownish situation. So I'll use the 89 Fine pencil from Blend Bunny and Donnie Darkowitz, and then the 666 lipstick from Melt Cosmetics. I think that'll be super cool. Well, she starts her job and everything is fine at first, but then Nina starts getting super weird. She's the wife. She starts making messes like out of nowhere, like just for the purpose of her cleaning it. She'll like make up weird lies and then go back on it later and act like Millie was the one that was crazy. The husband, Andrew, seems like such a nice guy. He's always so calm and patient with Millie. Millie starts to really feel bad for Andrew, like how can he stand to be with this woman? Over time, she ends up inserting herself more and more into this like relationship with Andrew and into this very picturesque lifestyle, just as things are getting out of control. I loved how fast-paced this was. It's so easy to fly through. I feel like so far her thrillers for me are very much like zero brain power. Like I don't have to really think too hard. I'm just reading it just for the entertainment value, just to enjoy it. It feels like I'm watching a series or something. Overall, certain plot points of this book were very predictable. Like I saw certain things coming from a mile away, but that didn't like derail me from the book, if that makes sense. Like I was just enjoying being here and being a part of the experience. I ended up giving it a solid 4 stars. It was super fun. I'm very intrigued to continue the series. Hopefully the series continues to be as good as I felt like the first one was. All right, lip liner is done. I simply could not do a dark brown lip liner while talking. Just gonna pop on my lipstick, which again is 666 by Melt, and then we'll talk about the last book. Ugh, love a dark lip. This dark lip with like the more muted eyes, it's so cool. I love. Basically, final book, and really I thought the last book I would have read would have been A Vicious Game, but then with the power going out and me reading The Housemaid, and then over this past weekend when I had a cold, I had nothing but time to read, right? So again, I checked out another book on my Libby app through the local library that I was very excited to read. It was actually recommended to me from Amanda from Makeup Just for Fun. It was Improbable Magic for Cynical Witches. This was so freaking cute. I didn't really know what to expect going into it. I knew it was like a queer YA romance, but it was so good. It also had like self-discovery kind of coming of age vibes as well. It was just so wholesome. But there were some heavier topics as well, like definitely dealing with like losing a love, betrayal of friends, using like drugs as a means to cope, stuff like that as well. Like it wasn't just fluffy cutesy. Basically, we have our main character, Eleanor. She is the least witchy person you will ever find, and she just so happens to live in Salem. She works at a witchy shop, all that stuff. She has a very blah take on life after losing her first love, and she's just very, I guess cynical is the right word, it's right there in the title. She ends up acquiring this book about the major arcana of tarot cards, and as she's reading and learning more about these cards, she also meets this girl named Pix. Immediately she is enamored by Pix. Pix is just so sweet and wonderful and believes in everything and just such a wholesome, it's honestly kind of Grumpy Sunshine in a way. Actually, I didn't even think about that. She's just so friendly and charming. She ends up becoming friends with her, inviting her into the coven. Things start to grow and blossom between them. It was just such a fun, wholesome ride. It was very whimsical, again, dealt with all of those topics I mentioned before. I just loved it. It felt like a warm hug to read it. It was so cute, and I feel like very underrated because I'd never heard it mentioned before Amanda told me about it. I ended up giving it 4 stars. It was just wonderful and cozy and cute, and that about wraps it up for all the books. So I just need to like get myself together because this hair is is something else. And then we will wrap this up. Thank you so much for watching. I had so much fun. So much fun. I just love books. I love chatting about books. I love reading books. I love discussing books with you. I love hearing your thoughts on these books. It is just my favorite thing. I love getting lost in a story. It is just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And whether you read 1 book or 20 books last month, either way, I think that's amazing. I would love to hear what you've read lately. Again, I love getting recommendations from you, so feel free to leave them down below. If you made it to the end of this video, why don't you leave some book emojis? And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. It helps my channel out a lot. And if you're not already, you can follow me over on Instagram. I'm BATTYBEAN there as well. Also, if you want to, you can subscribe. I'm posting most days over here, and you can join my channel memberships. The link to sign up will be down below. You'll get fun little perks, including a members only video once a month. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Okay, bye.